In March 1967, deep in the heart of Vietnam, a Marine Corps sniper decided to do something his superiors would consider completely insane. Carlos Hathcock, known to the enemy as White Feather because of the plume he kept in his hat, was about to prove that one man with nerves of steel and perfect aim could paralyze an enemy force 100 times his size for 3 entire days. Before we dive into this extraordinary story, if you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us continue bringing incredible stories from World War II and other military conflicts. Carlos Norman Hathcock II wasn't an ordinary soldier. Born on May 20th, 1942, he grew up hunting to feed his family, developing skills that would later make him one of the most feared snipers of the war. When he arrived in Vietnam in 1966, he initially served as a military policeman, but his extraordinary skills with a rifle soon led him to a far more dangerous position: elite sniper. Captain Edward James Land was assembling specialized sniper teams, recruiting Marines who had established shooting records. Hathcock had won the Wimbledon Cup for marksmanship, and that put him directly on Land's radar. The wheels of history were about to turn. The region north of Hill 55, known as Elephant Valley, was territory constantly infested with the enemy. The North Vietnamese moved at night, preparing ambushes and sniping operations. It was an area where a Marine's life was worth very little if you weren't extremely careful. In March 1967, Sergeant Hathcock and his spotter, Corporal Lance Burke, planned to spend 6 days in Elephant Valley. They separated from an infantry patrol and moved to a position where they could observe any enemy activity near the rice paddies in the middle of the valley. The pair spent the night in their hidden position, waiting. When the morning fog began to lift over the valley, they saw something that would make any soldier's heart race. An entire North Vietnamese Army infantry company, about 150 soldiers, moving through the fields. Hathcock had a special gift for using human weaknesses against the enemy. He preferred to strike early and late in the day. As he explained himself, in the morning they're coming out after a good night's sleep, smoking, laughing. When they come back in the evening, they're tired, relaxed, not paying attention to details. And that's exactly what happened. Hathcock shot the first 2 soldiers at the front of the formation before the unit had any time to react. Immediate chaos ensued. The North Vietnamese soldiers threw themselves behind a rice paddy dike, desperately seeking cover. But Hathcock and Burke had only just begun. What followed was one of the most extraordinary confrontations of the Vietnam War. 2 Marines against an entire company of 150 experienced soldiers. The North Vietnamese troops tried to locate the sniper's position, but Hathcock had a deep understanding of terrain. He had learned while hunting that the forest itself was his best armor. He constantly changed positions, finding new angles, and continued his deadly work. 4 enemy soldiers attempted an assault on the position the sniper team had just left. They paid with their lives. Hathcock and Burke cut them down quickly before they could realize they were attacking an empty position. Hathcock's tactic was considered insane because he wasn't just causing casualties. He was psychologically destroying that enemy company. Each well-placed shot told the North Vietnamese soldiers they were trapped, that no movement was safe, that death could come at any moment. During the night, the situation became even more desperate for the North Vietnamese. Hathcock and Burke used illumination rounds to continue shooting at any enemy soldier who tried to move from the dike. Darkness, which would normally be the North Vietnamese's ally, became just another source of terror. 2 or 3 soldiers tried to escape the previous day, possibly driven mad by thirst under the scorching sun. Their bodies lay exposed to the sun all day, beginning to rot and emit a terrible smell that constantly reminded survivors of the price of trying to flee. Leave your comment about what you would have done in this impossible situation. The courage of these men is something that deserves to be debated and remembered. Hathcock had a simple but effective philosophy. He preferred to work closer to his targets than most snipers, rarely making shots beyond 150 meters. This unorthodox approach allowed him to guarantee eliminations with single shots, conserving ammunition and minimizing his exposure. Captain Land later explained what made Hathcock so special. Carlos became part of the environment. He totally integrated into the environment. He had the patience, determination, and courage to do the job. He felt very strongly that he was saving Marine lives, and that's exactly what he did for 3 entire days in Elephant Valley. More than a third of the North Vietnamese company was now wounded or dead, their bodies visible from the sniper team's constantly shifting position. The psychological pressure was unbearable. The North Vietnamese soldiers knew they were being watched, but didn't know from where. Any movement could be their last. Thirst burned their throats under the relentless sun, but standing up to drink water meant certain death. Finally, in desperation, the North Vietnamese soldiers moved 2 platoons at once toward the small buildings at the end of the rice paddies. As they ran for what they thought was the safety of the buildings, Hathcock shot down more soldiers. When the enemy finally reached what they thought was the safety of the buildings, they discovered they had made a fatal mistake. Corporal Lance Burke called in artillery fire that decimated the forces gathered in the buildings. The North Vietnamese company was destroyed. On the morning of the 3rd day, when the sun rose over Elephant Valley, Hathcock and Burke had 6 hours to reach the rendezvous point and join up with the Marine patrol that would take them home. After receiving no fire in the last hour, a curious head peeked out from the dike. Hathcock put a bullet directly through the top of the exposed skull, bathing nearby North Vietnamese with blood and brain matter. They had purposely held fire long enough to make the enemy wonder if the Marines had finally left. It was Hathcock's last psychological blow before withdrawing. Hathcock's tactic was considered completely insane for several reasons. First, the Sniper Operations Manual was clear. A sniper team should never decisively engage with the enemy. The manual instructed snipers to disengage from the enemy and avoid prolonged combat. The famous shoot and scoot tactic was standard procedure, but Hathcock did exactly the opposite. He decisively engaged with a force 100 times his size and maintained that engagement for 3 complete days. This went against everything that was taught. Second, traditional military logic would say that 2 men against 150 should withdraw immediately. No reinforcements were coming. There was no easy escape route. They were deep in enemy territory, surrounded by more North Vietnamese forces that could arrive at any moment. But Hathcock understood something fundamental about psychological warfare. He knew that a force paralyzed by fear is as useless as a force destroyed. By keeping that company pinned down for 3 days, he not only caused significant casualties, but also created a story that would spread among North Vietnamese troops, increasing the legend of White Feather. Hathcock's reputation among the North Vietnamese grew to the point where they placed a bounty of $30,000 on his head, equivalent to about $250,000 today. It was an absurdly high amount, far above typical bounties for snipers, which ranged from a mere $8 to $2,000. Hathcock's bounty held the record as the highest of all time. The North Vietnamese sent their best man, known only as Cobra, to hunt Hathcock. Cobra began taking out easy targets from Hathcock's unit in an attempt to draw him into the open. It was a battle of invisible titans, each trying to outwit the other. But the story of Elephant Valley wasn't the only demonstration of Hathcock's insane tactics. On another mission, he volunteered to crawl for 1,500 yards across open field without sleep for 4 days and 3 nights to eliminate a North Vietnamese general. Hathcock crawled inch by painstaking inch to get into a good position to hit the target, even moving sideways to keep his trail thin and avoid being detected by communist forces. The sniper got to within 700 yards and calmly put a bullet through the general's heart. During that mission, Hathcock was attacked by a bamboo viper. Fortunately, he managed to avoid both the strike and keeping his position hidden from the enemy. When the general left the camp, Hathcock dropped the general with a single shot to the chest. Hathcock then spent another 3 days slowly crawling out of the area while North Vietnamese soldiers searched for whoever had killed their general. It took 3 days for him to get back to safety, but he managed to do so without being detected even once. On another occasion, Hathcock eliminated a North Vietnamese platoon leader known only as Apache. She enjoyed torturing captured American soldiers and was hated by Marine forces operating in the area. One day, Apache captured a soldier and sadistically tortured him within hearing range of Hathcock's own unit. She skinned the man, she cut off his eyelids, then pulled out his fingernails and castrated him. Then she let him go. As a result, Hathcock took his spotter, and they tracked Apache and her platoon. When she stepped off the trail to relieve herself, the sniper took his chance. He even put a second bullet into the hated torturer just to make sure. Hathcock's techniques revolutionized how snipers operated. He developed innovative tactics that are still studied today. He used white camouflage when most soldiers still wore standard uniforms. He developed a technique of targeting officers first, knowing that Soviet and North Vietnamese troops relied heavily on direct command. Some days he would eliminate more than 30 enemies, each shot carefully placed. He preferred to work in temperatures below -20 degrees Celsius, knowing that extreme cold would force Soviet soldiers to cluster around fires, creating perfect targets. Hathcock would pack dense snow in front of his position to provide a stable shooting platform and to prevent the barrel blast from kicking up revealing snow. He would keep snow in his mouth to hide his breath in the cold air. During his tour in Vietnam, Hathcock had 93 confirmed eliminations of Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army personnel. To have his eliminations confirmed during that period, an officer had to be there to confirm it. Consequently, due to the difficulty in achieving this, Hathcock himself estimates his actual number is closer to 300 to 400 enemy casualties. The sniper often volunteered for missions he knew nothing about, due to a natural belief, probably confirmed by statistics, that he was better than the rest of his comrades. Hathcock's philosophy about sniping was simple, but profound. He said, "I wasn't there to eliminate them. I was there to save Marine lives. Everyone I shot down couldn't hurt my brothers anymore." This mentality drove him to take risks others would consider suicidal. The situation in Elephant Valley was a perfect example. By engaging with a vastly superior force for 3 days, he wasn't just causing casualties, he was sending a message. The North Vietnamese weren't safe anywhere, not even in superior numbers. The Vietnam War was a conflict where snipers played a crucial role. The densely forested terrain and guerrilla tactics of the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army made conventional combat extremely difficult. Snipers like Hathcock provided a psychological and tactical advantage that American forces desperately needed, but the work took its toll. In 1969, Hathcock was traveling in an armored amphibious personnel carrier that ran over a mine. The vehicle instantly caught fire. Despite having severe burns, Hathcock managed to rescue 7 Marines from the burning vehicle before finally losing consciousness. The burns were so severe he spent a year in the hospital recovering. Even after physically recovering, the injuries haunted him for the rest of his life. He was forced to retire on medical disability in 1979. Carlos Hathcock spent his final years in Virginia, where he remained involved with the sniper community, teaching and mentoring. He passed away on February 22, 1999, at age 56, due to complications from multiple sclerosis. But his insane tactic in Elephant Valley remains as one of the most remarkable feats of sniping in modern military history. 2 men against 150, keeping them paralyzed for 3 entire days. It's a story that defies conventional military logic but demonstrates the power of exceptional skill, unwavering courage, and psychological warfare. Hathcock's story in Elephant Valley teaches us several important lessons about combat and survival. First, the value of patience. Hathcock was in no hurry. He knew each shot had to count, and he was willing to wait for the perfect moment. Second, the importance of terrain knowledge. Hathcock carefully studied every environment where he operated. He knew every tree, every dike, every possible escape route. This knowledge allowed him to move like a ghost, always one step ahead of the enemy. Third, psychological warfare can be as effective as kinetic warfare. By keeping that company pinned down for 3 days, Hathcock didn't just cause physical casualties. He caused psychological damage that would spread far beyond that specific company. Other North Vietnamese soldiers would hear the story and become more cautious, more fearful. Fourth, sometimes breaking the rules is necessary. The manual said to disengage. Conventional wisdom said to retreat. But Hathcock understood that in that specific situation, by maintaining engagement, he could cause more damage to the enemy than by withdrawing. Hathcock's tactic also demonstrates the importance of partnership in sniping operations. Corporal Lance Burke wasn't just a passive observer. He was half the team, providing vital information, calling in artillery fire when needed, and covering Hathcock while he repositioned. Traditional snipers worked in pairs, with one person determining the target and calculating wind direction and speed, while the other shot. Hathcock and Burke's partnership was perfect, each trusting the other completely. The story of Elephant Valley also reminds us of the human cost of war. Those 150 North Vietnamese soldiers weren't just numbers, they were men with families, dreams, and hopes. Many of them never returned home, trapped for 3 days under the scorching sun, terrified, and eventually eliminated. This is the brutal reality of war. There's no real glory, only survival. Hathcock knew this better than anyone. He didn't brag about his eliminations. He didn't celebrate the loss of life. He simply did his job to the best of his ability, trying to ensure his Marine brothers went home. Carlos Hathcock's legacy goes far beyond his impressive kill numbers. He fundamentally changed how the American military views and that employs snipers. Before Hathcock, snipers were often seen as long-distance shooters, nothing more. Hathcock proved that a skilled sniper could be a force multiplier, capable of impacting operations on a much larger scale. His tactics are studied in sniper schools around the world. His techniques for camouflage, positioning, and psychological warfare have become standard teaching material. Young snipers learn about Whitefeather and his impossible exploits. The story of Elephant Valley, in particular, is used as a case study on how a small number of highly skilled operators can have a disproportionate impact on the battlefield. It's a reminder that numbers don't always determine the outcome of an engagement. Today, special forces around the world employ similar tactics. Small teams are sent into enemy territory to cause disruption, gather intelligence, and eliminate high-value targets. These missions draw a direct line back to Hathcock's operations in Vietnam. Modern equipment has made sniping even more effective. Advanced telescopic sights, precision rifles, specialized ammunition, and communication technology allow today's snipers to operate with an effectiveness Hathcock could only dream of. But the foundation remains the same: patience, skill, and courage. Hathcock's story also reminds us of the importance of innovation in combat. He didn't blindly follow the manual. He experimented, adapted, and developed new techniques based on what worked in the field. This willingness to innovate made him immensely effective. His approach of targeting officers first, for example, was a tactical innovation that caused chaos in enemy formations. Without leadership, troops lost coordination and effectiveness. It was a brilliant application of asymmetric warfare. If you're enjoying this detailed content about real military stories, consider sharing this video with friends who also appreciate military history. Each share helps the channel grow and allows us to produce more quality content. Hathcock's insane tactic in Elephant Valley also highlights the importance of logistics in sniping operations. For 3 days, he and Burke needed water, food, and ammunition. They had to manage their resources carefully, knowing no resupply was coming. Every bullet had to count. Every movement had to be calculated. One mistake, and they would be dead. The pressure was immeasurable, but Hathcock thrived under pressure. He had the rare mentality of someone who became calmer and more focused when the situation got more dangerous. This mental quality is what separated Hathcock from average snipers. Anyone can learn to shoot accurately, but maintaining that accuracy when you're exhausted, dehydrated, with your heart racing and knowing 150 men want to kill you, that requires extraordinary mental strength. The 3 days in Elephant Valley also demonstrated the importance of intelligence and reconnaissance. Hathcock and Burke didn't stumble upon that North Vietnamese company by accident. They had positioned themselves specifically to observe enemy activity in the rice paddies. When the company appeared, they were ready. This meticulous preparation was typical of Hathcock. He rarely left anything to chance. He studied enemy patterns, learned their routines, and exploited their weaknesses. It was this systematic approach that made him so deadly. Hathcock's ability to remain motionless for long periods was also crucial. During his mission to eliminate the North Vietnamese general, he remained virtually motionless for days. This superhuman patience allowed him to blend completely with the environment. Captain Land said Carlos became part of the environment. This wasn't just a figure of speech. Hathcock actually achieved a state where he was no longer a man lying in the jungle. He was the jungle, completely integrated, virtually invisible. This ability to become invisible is what allowed him to survive missions that would have eliminated lesser snipers. The North Vietnamese knew Whitefeather was out there somewhere. They searched for him constantly. But they rarely found him, and when they did, it was usually too late. The story of Elephant Valley is also a story about the strength of human will. Physically, Hathcock and Burke were at an enormous disadvantage. They were deep in enemy territory, surrounded with no easy escape route. Any rational assessment of the situation would suggest they should retreat immediately. But Hathcock didn't think rationally in the conventional sense. He thought tactically. He saw an opportunity to cause significant damage to the enemy and save Marine lives by keeping that company pinned down and unable to join other operations. So he made the calculated decision to stay and fight. That decision required not just courage, but absolute confidence in his abilities. Hathcock knew he was better than the enemy soldiers. He knew he could outthink them, and he was right. For 3 days, he proved that one man with superior skill, superior positioning, and superior determination could overcome impossible odds. It's a lesson that resonates far beyond the battlefield, applicable to any situation where you face overwhelming adversity. The tactic of using illumination at night was particularly brilliant. The North Vietnamese typically relied on darkness to move and regroup. By illuminating the battlefield and continuing to shoot during the night, Hathcock denied them that refuge. They were pinned down 24 hours a day, with no rest, no relief. The psychological impact of this cannot be overstated. Imagine being under constant fire for 3 entire days, no sleep, afraid to move, watching your comrades being shot down one by one, thirst burning your throat, the relentless sun during the day, and then when night finally comes, offering no protection because the enemy simply illuminates the field again. This wasn't just combat. It was psychological torture, and it was incredibly effective in destroying the combat effectiveness of that unit. Even those who survived were likely traumatized by the experience, less effective in future engagements. When the North Vietnamese finally tried to make a desperate run for the buildings at the end of the rice paddies, moving 2 platoons at once, they thought they were making a smart tactical move. Greater numbers, coordinated movement, a clear objective. It should have worked. But Hathcock was waiting for them. He shot down more soldiers during the run, and then Burke called in artillery that decimated those who reached the buildings. It was the final blow to that destroyed company. Hathcock's ability to coordinate with artillery fire demonstrated another of his skills: effective communication. He wasn't operating in isolation. He maintained communication with his support units, calling in support when needed. It was combined arms warfare at its finest. Hathcock's final shot, when the curious head peeked out from the dike on the morning of the third day, was vintage Hathcock. He had purposely held fire to make the enemy think the Marines had left. Then, when someone made the mistake of checking, Hathcock was waiting. It was a final reminder that Whitefeather never let his guard down. That shot also demonstrated Hathcock's commitment to his mission. He could have let that last soldier live. He and Burke had 6 hours to reach the extraction point. Every second counted. But Hathcock made the shot anyway, ensuring the lesson was complete. The story of Elephant Valley spread quickly through Marine ranks in Vietnam. It became legendary, a story Marines told themselves for inspiration. If Whitefeather could hold off an entire company for 3 days, then anything was possible. This inspiration was part of Hathcock's value to the Marines. He didn't just eliminate enemies, he raised morale among his own troops. Knowing the legendary sniper was out there protecting them gave Marines confidence. Conversely, Hathcock's presence destroyed North Vietnamese morale. The $30,000 bounty on his head was as much an acknowledgment of his effectiveness as an attempt to restore morale by promising his eventual elimination. But all the operatives sent to collect the bounty failed. Whitefeather was virtually untouchable. Hathcock's insane tactic in Elephant Valley represents a defining moment in the history of sniper warfare. It was proof of concept that an extremely skilled sniper could be a strategic weapon, not just a tactical one. He could influence the outcome of much larger engagements, paralyze entire units, and create psychological effects that extended far beyond the number of casualties caused. In the years since Vietnam, modern militaries have internalized these lessons. Snipers are no longer just long-distance shooters. They're specialized operators, capable of complex missions, intelligence gathering, and even psychological warfare. And all of this traces back to pioneers like Carlos Hathcock. When Hathcock finally left Vietnam, he had fundamentally changed the sniper profession. He had demonstrated what was possible with exceptional skill, courage, and innovative tactical thinking. His 93 confirmed eliminations, and probably 300 to 400 total, saved countless Marine lives by neutralizing threats before they could hurt his troops. But more than the numbers, it was the way he conducted these operations that mattered. Impossible missions executed with impossible precision. Insane risks calculated with mathematical precision. Courage that bordered on madness, but always grounded in superior skill and preparation. The insane tactic in Elephant Valley remains as one of the greatest individual feats of sniping in military history. 2 men held off a force 100 times their size for 3 complete days, causing devastating casualties and creating a legend that lives to this day. It's a story that defies belief, but every detail is documented and confirmed. Carlos Hathcock proved that sometimes madness and genius are separated only by the outcome. His decision to stay and fight in Elephant Valley seemed insane. Any rational analysis would suggest it was suicidal. But Hathcock wasn't operating with rational analysis. He was operating with deep understanding of combat, absolute confidence in his abilities, and unwavering commitment to his mission. And in the end, his insane tactic worked perfectly. The North Vietnamese company was destroyed. Hathcock and Burke escaped unharmed, and the legend of White Feather grew even more, spreading fear among enemies and inspiration among allies. It was, in every sense, a complete triumph. Carlos Hathcock's story in Elephant Valley reminds us that in war, as in life, sometimes you have to break the rules to win. Sometimes you have to do what seems insane to achieve the impossible. And sometimes, just sometimes, one man with enough determination can change the course of an entire battle. This is the story of how one sniper's insane tactic held off an entire company for 3 days. It's a story of courage, skill, and unwavering determination. It's a story that deserves to be told and remembered, a story that inspires us to face our own impossible adversities with the same courage and determination that Carlos Hathcock demonstrated during those 3 days in Elephant Valley.